Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So here we are. It's Judgment Day for evil Erin Patterson. Sorry, I'm a little bit early, but the ABC News Australia, they came on early as well, so they're having a little talk about the case before the sentencing. So, anyway, before we get going, so I'll take this opportunity to just say my thanks and everything that while I'm a little bit early. Thank you to everyone for watching, for liking, for subscribing. Special thanks to people that followed this trial right from the beginning. Followed this trial through with me. We sat through a long trial, and they were just pointing out, the reporters. In fact, I'll put the background on. Hi Yvonne, hi Lily, you late birds. I mean, we couldn't miss this. I've slept. I hope you've all had a good Sunday. Basically what I've done is slept most of the day so that I could be awake, for this, because couldn't miss it. We followed this case, followed it right from, let me put that, this is what we're going to be watching. Oh, God, did I mean to do that? Yeah, I've slept most of the day so that I could be awake for this. I'm not very sort of much of a night person, really. So anyway, I'm here, I'm still awake. So yeah, this case that we followed right from the beginning. So just a reminder to anybody who maybe has been on Mars and didn't know what's happened here. Let me just turn that down a bit. They're just talking about the case at the moment. Erin has entered the courtroom, apparently. The van came and Erin was taken into the courtroom. So she's there. It's scheduled to start in, don't know, not long anyway, at 9:30 Melbourne time, which will be half something. I suppose it'd be 12:30 UK time, 1:30 Spanish time. It's scheduled to start. Now, of course, everything's taken longer than expected in this case so far. So this sentencing is only supposed to take 30 minutes, between 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But you know what Justice Beale is like. Everything takes longer, doesn't it? So it'll probably take 3 hours or something. Remember Justice Beale? Have I got a picture of him somewhere? Here he is. This is the judge that will be delivering his sentence. Yeah, he's been late with everything that he's done. This case has gone on and on and on. It was originally, the trial was supposed to take 6 weeks. It ended up taking about 3 months, didn't it? Just there was it was a lot of evidence presented by the prosecution. By this woman, Dr. Nanette Rogers. She presented the prosecution and she successfully prosecuted with, no smoking gun, but so much circumstantial evidence. So I think it was just the absolute breadth of the circumstantial evidence that convicted Erin, alongside the fact that she just couldn't do anything but tell lies. She lied about everything. So that's what led to her being convicted. The lies combined with the evidence. Okay, let me finish saying my thank yous and then I can take the banner off. So very special thank you to my members, of course, to people that buy me coffees. Adriana, I've tried to find a way to thank you for you PayPal me a coffee. Thank you so much. What else? Oh yeah, anyone who PayPals me, sends super stickers, contributes to my channel in any way, in any positive way. Thank you so much. So hi, you lovely lurkers. I don't know why I'm bothering throwing a kiss, because I've got a picture of Nanette up there. Thank you. lovely lurkers for watching. Thank you, loathsome lurkers. And those of you in the chat, which I think is just Yvonne and Lily at the moment, but I think I did say hello to them. Yeah, hopefully I'm sure that there's more people watching at home, and I'm sure there'll be more people coming in. But yeah, let's have a little talk first of all before, of course, it's the sentencing that we're here for. It's going to be televised for the first time in Victoria's history. There's never been a sentencing televised. So it's this man, Justice Beale, who decided that he would televise it. Now, we will only see him. The camera will be focused on him. We won't get to see who else is in the courtroom or Erin or any reactions, nothing like that. We will only see Justice Beale as he delivers his sentence. But we presume that there will be Ian Wilkinson, the only surviving witness. Well, let me take my banner off now. So yeah, poor Ian, the only survivor, and his testimony, of course, was crucial as well, wasn't it? Because without if Ian hadn't survived, you know, there's a lot of things that were submitted and that were, you know, Erin would have got away with a lot more, wouldn't she, if there wouldn't have been a survivor to testify about the different colour plates, about her lying about having cancer. You know, there's a lot of, Ian contributed a lot, didn't he, to the testimony. Definitely, if Ian wouldn't have been there. Oh, is that Erin coming out there? There's Erin, looks like coming out of the van. No, she does cut a very pathetic figure, I think. And, you know, if you did it, if you just have to remember what she did. You know, these three vulnerable people, relatives, you know, in-laws, they're dead because of Erin's actions. So I do think she, you know, she gives off this pathos. You know, you feel like you could almost feel sorry for her, but how can you feel sorry for her? Because it's not only that she murdered them, but she planned it. She planned it over time. And they were good to her. You know, these were people who were good to her. And Heather and Ian, they were thrilled to get their invitation to lunch, weren't they? And, you know, they didn't know that as she was sat there chatting with them, she knew that they were dead people walking. You know, she had killed them, and she did it. You know, it's like murder in slow motion, isn't it? It's like sitting there watching them eating those beef Wellingtons, knowing what she was doing to them. And we have to remember they suffered a long, agonizing death. It wasn't quick. It wasn't painless. It was long and it was painful. And until they were put in a coma, they would have been in agony. And of course, you know, diarrhea, vomiting, pain. You know, we have to remember this. So she'll put on this pitiful, she's like a pitiful figure now, isn't she? Look, this was her, remember, with the false tears. Yeah, looking to see the tears that weren't there, getting all their names wrong. She didn't care about those people. Erin only cares about herself. But, you know, yeah, it's difficult because we're different kind of people. We want to feel empathy, but Erin, you can't feel empathy for Erin. She's a very conceited person. She thought she was cleverer than everybody else. So that's the shock that she's received, is that she isn't cleverer than everybody else. And she could not pull the wool over the jury's eyes. So presumably also today will be there Simon, her ex-husband. Of course, it was his mum and dad that she killed, and his auntie. They were his relatives, really. But they'd always been good to Erin. And, you know, she called them over saying she had something important to discuss, told them she had cancer. They all prayed for her, not knowing that they were on a death warrant. Terrible. It's terrible, terrible crime. You know, it's not a heat of passion, you know, killing people in the heat of the moment, a moment of madness. This is a planned, organised murder of 4 people, and it would have been 5 had Simon have gone to the lunch. Now, we can also expect that, I wonder if her friend Ali, ripped jeans Ali, maybe as it's in the Supreme Court, maybe she'll put some decent clothes on for this sentencing. This is Erin's best friend. She's a supporter, her only supporter from what I can tell, but who knows, she might have other supporters. I presume she'll be there. Of course, Mr. Mandy will be there. This was the prosecution lawyer. And of course, the defense lawyer, he didn't manage to get, his defense wasn't good enough. But to be honest, he had no chance, did he? Colin Mandy, really, this was like, how can you defend the indefensible? He had no witnesses to call except for Erin. There were no, Nanette Rogers, the prosecutor, she called 50 witnesses. 50. And Colin Mandy called 1. And that one witness that he called was Erin. Nobody else. So let's have a little look at Erin again in the hellhole, because I've already put her in the hellhole. She's in the hellhole. Now let's just have a look at this, because it looks like Ian's just arrived there. Where are we? Oh, it's gone back to the thing now. So we're going to listen into this in a moment. I just want to let you know the results of the poll. I did a poll, what did you think a sentencing would be? Would it be life without parole, life with the possibility of parole, or any other thing? Overwhelmingly, you voted. Just have a look. You voted that you thought it would be life without parole. Because I've got to try and find it now. I thought I left it up there somewhere, but obviously I didn't. Oh, there it is, yeah. So, let's see. So it was, there were 23 votes. 78% of you voted life without parole. I can't see how it can be anything else, to be honest. That would be my... he'd have to be a very lenient judge to give a life with parole. But 17% of you said it might be life with parole. And 4% of you said something else, but didn't tell me what the something else was. So, yeah, overwhelmingly 78% of you said it will be life without parole. And I've got, here's Simon there. There's Simon arriving. Let's have a listen in, because I had the sound turned down. I'm going to turn the sound up now.
Coverage of the trial, and Ruth Dubois also touched on that, the fact that in some cases their trauma has been used as entertainment. So that's what we heard really through the victim impact statements when we were in court last. And we also heard, interestingly, about Erin Patterson's custody arrangements, if you wanted to touch on that as well. She is kept in a cell basically for 22 to 24 hours a day. She's guarded quite closely, and that is due to her notoriety. And this is something that her defence team said Justice Beale should take into account when sentencing, that because of her notoriety, she has to be supervised. So she has more limited access to other things in prison, for example, the library and what have you. We also heard that she has access in her prison cell to a television. She's an avid crocheter, so In her cell, she does have some items that she's crocheted. She has access to a hair straightener. So we heard really all kinds of things about her custody arrangements as well.
Yeah, so for those watching and those just joining us, convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson will soon be sentenced by a judge in the Victorian Supreme Court. This will mark the conclusion of the mushroom murder case that, as we know, has gripped the world, and that will be broadcast live. We will be broadcasting that here on the ABC in what is a first for the Victorian Supreme Court, to allow everybody to see that process and give transparency to that. Alex, we spoke about this a little earlier, but tell us why that decision has been made in this case that has had so much interest from here in Australia, but of course overseas as well.
Yeah, so essentially, as you say, the court has opened this up to be televised live. It's a highly unusual decision. We don't see that very often. We know that in the case of George Pell at the county court, that was also broadcast live. But here at the Supreme Court, that's never happened, according to...
So, yeah, it's never happened at the Supreme Court. It's never, a sentence has never been televised. And apparently I was listening before, and Judge Beale said it was because he wanted people to get the information as quickly as possible. Maybe it's because he wanted to be a little bit of in the limelight. Hey, I don't know, wouldn't surprise me. He was very flippant throughout the trial, Judge Beale, I thought. Made quite a lot of inappropriate jokes for a judge, in my opinion. But anyway, there you go. We'll see. It'd be nice to see him talk in person, because, of course, we heard what he had to say, but we could never, this is the first time that we've actually heard anybody really speak. And I'm surprised she gets her hair straighteners. God, hair straighteners are lethal, aren't they? My God. You could easily burn a guard, couldn't you, or something like that with your hair straighteners. But yeah, and I agree with you, Yvonne, how you imagine they're sat there at this dinner table, praying for this woman, praying for her because she's told them that she's got cancer. I mean, I don't think, I think that's like the most shocking thing of all. Just the cynicism, to sit there with people. You must really hate people, or you must be a really evil person to be able to do that. We all get angry at people. We all, say, oh, kill them. That's an expression that we use a lot, isn't it? I'll kill you. But we don't mean it. We don't mean that we're going to kill him. It's just an expression. But when Erin was thinking that, she meant it. She really meant she was going to kill him. But they didn't know. And then she sat there, let them pray for her. Honestly, it just knowing what was going on in their bodies, or what would happen in their bodies. Gosh, it's quite, just defies belief for me, those poor people. And they were nice people. That was the problem, if you like. That was, they paid the price for being nice people. Because she didn't respect the fact that they were nice people and they cared about her, etc. She thought that was pathetic. She thought it was funny, really, didn't she? Or irritating that they were nice people and that they believed in God and they said they should pray, and that we should let them pray for her having cancer. But she got annoyed when Don had said, they would pray for the family and this, that and the other. She got annoyed about that, but she didn't mind them praying for her false cancer that she never had. How could she do that? And then afterwards, so after they, I always think, God, what was the farewells like? Did she give them a kiss on the cheek? Was there a Judas kiss there at the end? Is your farewell saying goodbye to someone? Was it a kiss? Thanks for the dinner. They'd be saying, oh, it was a beautiful dinner, Erin. Thank you so much. She'd be saying, oh, no, it was lovely to have you anytime. See you soon in church. You know, quite often I envisage in my head what their farewells were like. How did she say goodbye to these people that she knew that she literally had murdered with a meal? How did she say goodbye to them? She knew she wouldn't see them again, not alive anyway. Just, I think about this case a lot because I think about all the cases that I covered, to be honest, from time to time. Over a day, I probably think about all of them. But whenever I think about this one, I just think about that breathtaking evilness, to be able to sit there and feed someone what's going to kill them. But yeah, could you imagine, Yvonne? There probably was hugs and kisses. I don't, there'd be some sort of goodbye. Would it be a hug and a kiss or handshake? I don't know. I don't know what they were like, if they were an affectionate family or not. I just don't know. And they'd be, imagine the people she'd poisoned, they'd be leaving saying, don't worry, Erin, we'll be there for you. We'll pray for you. We'll help you as much as we can. They'd be comforting Erin, wouldn't they, after this big bombshell that she'd told him, that she had cancer and she didn't know how she was going to tell the children and this, that and the other. You just can imagine the conversation. It would have all revolved around Erin. They would have been so concerned about Erin, wouldn't they? And all the time they had a ticking time bomb inside their bodies. And she knew it. She knew it. She did not give a toss, did she? She did not care at all. I mean, that's breathtaking, isn't it? It's breathtaking indifference. Just can't imagine it. Anyway, let's have a little listen again to what they're saying. I really cannot wrap my head around this woman. You cover murder. Sometimes you can see a reason why somebody would, even though it's a twisted reason. But with Erin, the reason was just pure spite. Yeah.
Erin Patterson, after a long trial, during which you gave evidence that the poisoning of your 4 lunch guests on the 29th of July was an accident, the jury found you guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In other words, the jury necessarily found that you deliberately served poison meals to Gail and Don Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson, and that you did so intending to kill them. Only Ian Wilkinson survived. The maximum penalty for murder is life imprisonment, and for attempted murder, 25 years imprisonment. Murder is also a standard sentence offence, and the standard sentence offence for murder is 25 years imprisonment.
25?
The prosecution submits, and your counsel concedes, that your offending falls into the worst category of offending for these offences, and that you should receive the maximum penalties for your crimes. I agree, for reasons that I will come to in due course. The prosecution also submits that, having regard to the horrendous nature of your crimes, I should not fix a non-parole period. In other words, the prosecution submits that you should never have the opportunity of being released from prison on parole. Your counsel challenged this submission, relying principally on the harsher than usual conditions of your imprisonment, which both sides agree are likely to continue for the foreseeable future. Whether or not to fix a non-parole period is the main dispute which I have to determine. These sentencing reasons consist of 4 parts. First, the circumstances of the offences. Second, your circumstances. Third, relevant sentencing law. And fourth, the actual sentences. It is convenient at this stage to mention one aspect of sentencing law. Where the prosecution alleges circumstances that aggravate your offending, the prosecution must prove those circumstances beyond reasonable doubt. Where the defence alleges circumstances of mitigation, the defence must prove those circumstances on the balance of probabilities. Just before I turn to the circumstances of your offences, I note that at your trial, the prosecution conceded that they could not prove motive. As is standard, I directed the jury that the prosecution did not have to prove motive, only the elements of the offences, and that, quote, some murders occur for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
The motives for such murders may only ever be known to the offenders. Clearly, the jury was satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that you committed the alleged offences. Only you know why you committed them. I will not be speculating about that matter. I will begin my discussion of the circumstances of your offences with the fact that you were familiar with the iNaturalist website from at least May 2022. That is a website on which people can post and view sightings of death-cap mushrooms, amongst other things. On the 28th of May 22, you accessed the iNaturalist website and navigated to its worldwide map in relation to sightings of death-cap mushrooms. Using that map, you accessed information concerning the sighting of death-cap mushrooms in Moorabbin, a suburb of Melbourne. In late 22, a dispute arose between you and your estranged husband, Simon Patterson, regarding child support payments for your two young children who live with you. In December 22, you referred to that dispute in your communications with a Facebook Messenger group with whom you shared an interest in true crime. You were scathing in your remarks about both Simon and his parents, Don and Gail Patterson. Amongst other things, you derided your father-in-law's suggestion that you and Simon get together and pray for your children, commenting, quote, this family, I swear to fucking God. You called them, quote, a lost cause. You wondered whether they had, quote, any capacity for self-reflection at all. You said, quote, fuck them, and that you suspected the best thing you could do was, quote, just to forget about all of them and live your life. You accused Simon of, quote, gaslighting you, and Don and Gail of using, quote, weasel words. You called Simon, quote, a deadbeat, and wondered why Gail was not, quote, horrified by his stance regarding child support. West of Leongatha, where you lived. Miss Mackenzie observed death-cap mushrooms in Loch Reserve and posted details of her observations, including photographs, on the iNaturalist website the same day. Ms. Mackenzie disposed of all the death-cap mushrooms that she could find because of the danger she thought they posed, especially to young children. On the morning of the 28th of April 23, your mobile phone, which was never recovered by investigators, connected to certain cell towers consistent with a possible visit by you to the Loch Reserve. That afternoon, you purchased a food dehydrator in Leongatha. Between the 28th of April and the 4th of May 23, you photographed forage mushrooms on the trays of your dehydrator. The images were found by investigators on a Samsung tablet later seized from your home. Dr. Tom May, a world-renowned expert in fungi, gave evidence at your trial that those images were, quote, consistent with death-cap mushrooms to a high degree of confidence. On the 21st of May 23, Dr. May observed death-cap mushrooms in Nielsen Street, Outram. Outram is a small town about a 23-minute drive southwest of Leongatha. Later that day, Dr. May posted details of his observations, including photographs, on the iNaturalist website. On the morning of the 22nd of May 23, your phone connected to certain cell towers, consistent with a possible visit by you to Loch Reserve. Later that morning, your phone connected to certain cell towers, consistent with a possible visit by you to Nielsen Street, Outram. On the 24th of June 23, you hosted a lunch at your Leongatha home attended by Don and Gail and your children. You had invited Simon to that lunch, but he declined, saying in a text message, quote, "Hi, Erin. Thank you for your kind lunch invite, together with Mum and Dad. I'm sorry, I'll decline, as I feel too uncomfortable about it." Between the 28th of June and the 7th of July 23, there were a series of messages between you and Gail in which you falsely represented that you had undergone a needle biopsy for a lump in your arm and an MRI. In response to a message from Gail as to how you got on with your medical test, you messaged her on the 7th of July 23 that, quote, "There's a bit to digest with everything that's come out of it all. I might talk more about it with you both when I see you in person." On the 16th of July 23, you attended the Sunday service at the Corumburra Baptist Church, where Ian Wilkinson was and is the pastor. After the service, you invited Gail and Don Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson to lunch at your home at Gibson Street, Leongatha, on the 29th of July 23. Both the Pattersons and the Wilkinsons were surprised by the invitation, as the Wilkinsons had never previously been invited to a meal at your home. You also invited Simon, telling him that you had invited his parents and his aunt and uncle. You told him you had some important medical news which you wanted to discuss at the lunch and that you did not want the children to be present. Simon initially accepted your invitation and informed his parents that the purpose of the lunch was to discuss your medical issues and how to inform the children. On the evening of the 28th of July 23, Simon and you exchanged messages. Simon's read, quote, "Sorry, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with you, Mum, Dad, Heather and Ian tomorrow. But I am happy to talk about your health and implications of that at another time if you'd like to discuss on the phone. Just let me know." You replied 5 minutes later, quote, "That's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow, which has been exhausting in light of the issues I'm facing, and spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make beef Wellingtons because I wanted it to be a special meal, as I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. It's important to me that you're all there tomorrow and that I can have the conversations that I need to have. I hope you'll change your mind. Your parents and Heather and Ian are coming at 12:30. I hope to see you there." On Saturday, the 29th of July 23, you served your 4 lunch guests individual beef Wellingtons, which were deliberately poisoned with death cap mushrooms. You gave evidence at your trial that had Simon attended the lunch, you would also have served him a beef Wellington. I accept the evidence of Ian Wilkinson that you served your guests their meals on 4 grey plates, while your individual beef Wellington was on a smaller orangey tan coloured plate, a fact that Heather also commented on to Ian and Simon the next day. I find that you did this to ensure that you did not mistakenly consume a poisoned meal. I also accept the evidence of Ian Wilkinson that at the conclusion of the meal, you falsely told your guests that you had been diagnosed with cancer and sought their advice as to whether and how you should break the news to your children that you had a life-threatening illness. Not long after this conversation started, your son and his friend, who had gone to a movie, returned home. The conversation about cancer ceased, but not before all your lunch guests, at Ian's suggestion, prayed for your health. Soon after, they left. Around midnight to 1 a.m. on Sunday, the 30th of July 23, all of your lunch guests fell seriously ill, suffering repeated vomiting and diarrhoea. On Sunday morning, Gail and Don informed Simon of their conditions and called an ambulance, which took them to nearby Corumburra Hospital. Simon attended the Wilkinsons' home to find that Heather and Ian were similarly unwell. He took them first to Corumburra Hospital, but was redirected to Leongatha Hospital because of limited resources. By way of contrast, You made a round trip of approximately 2 hours on Sunday afternoon to take your son to a flying lesson at Tyabb. By the Sunday evening, Don and Gail had been transferred to Dandenong Hospital. On the morning of Monday, the 31st of July, 23, Ian and Heather were also transferred to Dandenong Hospital. Later that day, Gail and Don were transferred to the Austin Hospital, as were Heather and Ian on Tuesday, the 1st of August, 23. All of them were experiencing advanced multiple organ failure. Having learned from Simon on the Sunday that your parents-in-law had been hospitalised, you attended Leongatha Hospital on the Monday, complaining of diarrhoea. You did not stay long. Shortly after a doctor indicated to you that death cap mushroom poisoning was suspected, you left, despite warnings by another doctor and nurse that your life was in danger. You returned over an hour and a half later. When you returned, you showed reluctance to receive treatment for suspected death cap mushroom poisoning and to organise a medical assessment for your children who were at school. Medical staff were urging you to have the children assessed because you claimed, falsely, that on the Sunday night you fed them the leftovers of the beef Wellingtons with the pastry and mushrooms scraped off. Eventually, you arranged with Simon to collect the children and bring them to hospital. On the Monday morning, police recovered beef Wellington remains from a bin outside your home, which were later found to contain death cap mushroom toxins. On the Monday afternoon, you were transferred to Monash Medical Centre in Clayton. Simon brought the children there. You and the children were kept in hospital overnight for observation. At both Leongatha Hospital and Monash Medical Centre, you were asked by various people, including doctors and representatives of the Health Department and the Child Protection Service, where you had sourced the mushrooms for the beef Wellingtons. You said you had purchased some fresh mushrooms at Woolworths and some dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery. You were vague about the location of the Asian grocery, claiming you had purchased the dried mushrooms several months before and that the shop could have been in one of a number of suburbs that fall within the boundaries of the city of Monash. You denied having foraged for mushrooms, a lie repeated in your recorded police interview on the 5th of August 23. At your trial, you maintained the story about having sourced some of the mushrooms from an Asian grocery, but testified that in May and June of 23, you had foraged for edible mushrooms in various places, including the Corumburra Botanical Gardens. You testified that you had dehydrated these mushrooms and put them in a container which contained the dried mushrooms from the Asian grocery, and that you used the dried mushrooms in that container along with the fresh mushrooms from Woolworths in the beef Wellingtons. You testified that in this way, death cap mushrooms must have accidentally found their way into the meals served to your lunch guests. The jury rejected this elaborate explanation. They found that you deliberately poisoned the meals of your lunch guests. I am satisfied that your vague story about the Asian grocery was a lie. When you realised that the lie would not work because death cap mushrooms cannot be cultivated commercially, and there were no other reports of people falling ill from mushrooms purchased at Asian groceries, you changed tack. You concocted the story you told the jury about foraged mushrooms ending up in the container with the Asian grocery mushrooms and then accidentally ending up in the beef Wellingtons. On the afternoon of Tuesday, the 1st of August 23, you and the children were discharged from Monash Hospital. On the morning of the 2nd of August 23, you disposed of your dehydrator at a local tip, the Coonawarra transfer station. On the 4th of August 23, investigators recovered your dehydrator from the tip. Forensic examination revealed that the dehydrator contained traces of death cap mushrooms. That same day, 4th of August 23, Heather Wilkinson, aged 66, and Gail Patterson, aged 70, died from death cap mushroom poisoning. And Don Patterson, who was desperately ill, was given a liver transplant. On the 5th of August 23, the police executed a search warrant at your home. You handed over a dummy phone. It was not the phone that you had been using throughout most of 23, the phone which on the 28th of April 23 had connected to certain cell towers indicating a possible visit to Locke, and which on the 22nd of May 23 had connected to certain cell towers indicating possible visits to Locke and Outram. In your recorded interview following the search, you denied having foraged for mushrooms and denied owning a dehydrator. Late on the 5th of August 23, Don Patterson, aged 70, died from death cap mushroom poisoning.
Poor Don.
Ian Wilkinson very nearly died, but gradually his condition improved. On the 21st of August 23, he was discharged from the intensive care unit to a ward at the Austin Hospital. On the 11th of September 23, he was moved to the Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. On the 21st of September 23, he was discharged home. He has not fully recovered. He has reduced kidney function, ongoing respiratory issues, and reduced energy. On the 2nd of November 23, the police executed another search warrant at your home, seizing more electrical devices. You were arrested and charged. You have been in custody ever since. Let me now summarise the aggravating circumstances of your offending. Your offending, which resulted in the death of 3 people and near death of another, involved substantial premeditation. I am satisfied that by the 16th of July 23, when you unusually invited Simon, his parents and his aunt and uncle to a lunch without the children to discuss your non-existent medical issues, you did so with the intention of killing them all.
God.
The dehydrator, which you purchased in late April 23, enabled you to preserve death cap mushrooms, which you put into the individual beef Wellingtons served to your guests. Whether those death cap mushrooms came from Locke on the 28th of April 23, or from Locke or Outram on the 22nd of May 23, or from another location in May or June of 23, as you suggested in your testimony, is in my view of no great moment. After learning from Simon on Sunday the 30th of July 23 that some or all of your lunch guests had been hospitalised, you showed no pity for your victims. Instead of informing those treating the Pattersons and Wilkinsons that you had used foraged mushrooms, which you could have done without having to admit that you had deliberately poisoned their meals, you repeatedly denied foraging, insisting that the mushrooms for the beef Wellingtons were sourced solely from Woolworths and an Asian grocery. We will never know whether revealing the use of foraged mushrooms would have made a difference. But the administration of the drug psilocybin, which is a specific antidote for death cap mushroom poisoning, was not commenced on the 30th of July 23 because at that stage, the evidence regarding the type of toxin was inconclusive. Similarly, the administration of NAC to preserve the victims' livers from toxins was not commenced until almost midnight on the 30th of July 23 for Don Patterson and on the 31st of July 23 for the others. The prosecution submitted that I should infer from your pitiless behaviour that your intention to kill was ongoing and that this constitutes an additional aggravating circumstance. I accept that submission. As the Wilkinsons' daughter, Ruth Dubois, remarked in her victim impact statement, you, quote, followed through on your lethal plan. Your lunch guests each suffered severe gastrointestinal illness on the Sunday and Monday prior to being sedated and mechanically ventilated. Their suffering was protracted. And Ian Wilkins suffers ongoing health issues. This aggravates your offending. The prosecution submitted that you must have anticipated that your victims would suffer in the way they did. I am satisfied of that beyond reasonable doubt. It is implausible that you would have selected death cap mushrooms without ascertaining how they would work upon your victims. Further, the devastating impact of your crimes is not limited to your direct victims. Your crimes have harmed a great many people. I will expand on
this aggravating circumstance when I turned to the victim impact statements. In addition to denying the use of foraged mushrooms, you engaged in an elaborate cover-up of your guilt. I find that you disposed of the 4 grey plates on which you served the poisoned beef Wellingtons. You falsely made out that you had fed your children leftover beef Wellingtons with the pastry and mushrooms scraped off. You feigned illness. You disposed of the dehydrator soon after you were released from hospital. You maintained the vague story about sourcing dried mushrooms at an Asian grocery and had the gall to tell police in your recorded police interview that you had been very, very helpful to the health department in its investigation of the incident. You disposed of your phone and provided police with a dummy phone. You lied to the police in your recorded police interview about various matters. Finally, and most importantly, your offending involved an enormous betrayal of trust. Your victims were all your relatives by marriage. More than that, they had all been good to you and your children over many years, as you acknowledged in your testimony. Not only did you cut short 3 lives and cause lasting damage to Ian Wilkinson's health, thereby devastating the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families, you inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents. The victim impact statements reveal the immense and ongoing anguish suffered by your many victims, direct and indirect. No summary could do justice to the individual and collective power of those statements. It is not my intention here to summarise or refer to every statement, but rather to highlight some key aspects. 4 generations of the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families have been traumatised by your crimes, not to mention their friends. Don's mother, Martha Patterson, who is aged 100, made a victim impact statement. In it, she prayed for God's healing for her family. Gail and Heather's father, now deceased, also reached his 100th birthday in 2024, but tragically, only one of his 3 daughters, Lynn Young, whose statement was read to the court, was alive to mark that milestone with him. And there are many references in the statements to the trauma experienced by the Patterson and Wilkinson grandchildren. Many of your adult victims struggled not only with the loss of their loved ones and the terrible way they died, but with the distress, even guilt, at their own seeming inability to ease the suffering of those close to them. They keenly feel their limitations, and in particular, the impossibility of shielding the youngest from the incessant discussion of the case in the media, online, in public spaces, even in the schoolyard. Many also struggled to cope with work and studies, and many have experienced additional financial burdens. There is, of course, great anger at the callousness of your actions. To take just one example, Ian Wilkinson's sister, Dorothy Dicker, questions, quote, how anyone could sit there and watch those 4 kind and caring people eat that meal.
Exactly.
Your failure to exhibit any remorse pours salt into all the victims' wounds. The children of your direct victims speak of the distress of watching their parents suffer in hospital. For example, Don and Gail's son Matthew remarks, quote, watching my parents suffer in hospital from severe poisoning caused shock, grief and lasting trauma. Ian and Heather's son David remembers his mother being, quote, desperate for water, which she was not allowed by medical staff, and saying her, quote, insides were burning.
Oh, bless.
David also mentions his father's tortured experience, quote, black lips, gaunt face, pained and serious expression. At your plea hearing, Ian Wilkinson memorably read his victim impact statement to the court. Amongst other things, he humbly expressed his great admiration and love for his wife, Heather, and his concern for others, even you.
Yeah.
He offered you forgiveness for what you did to him. Quote, In regards to the many harms done to me, I make an offer of forgiveness to Erin. I say harms done to me advisedly. I have no power or responsibility to forgive harms done to others. However, I encourage Erin to receive my offer of forgiveness for those harms done to me with full confession and repentance. I bear her no ill will. That offer of forgiveness presents you with an opportunity. You would do well to embrace it in the manner he suggests. In commenting on the unprecedented coverage of your case, Ian Wilkinson also made this point, quote, "It's one of the distressing shortcomings of our society that so much attention is showered on those who do evil and so little on those who do good. Your lunch guests undoubtedly belong to that company of people among us who do good. The victim impact statements make it clear that each one of them, over many years, gave of themselves generously and made lasting contributions to many, many lives, and in Ian's case, continues to make. All of them, inspired by their Christian faith, were deeply invested not only in their families, but in their wider communities, as the statements from members of the Currumborough Baptist Church attest. A word that is used again and again in the statements to describe your crimes is, quote, senseless. But what also surfaces in the statements is hope and gratitude for the care shown by others. Don and Gail's daughter, Anna Terrington, writes, quote, "We have to say goodbye for now to Mum and Dad and Heather." Don's brother, Colin, writes, quote, "As Christians, they were people of hope. And sharing that hope, my loss is not one marked by despair." Ruth Dubois expresses her great appreciation for the efforts made and compassion shown by the medical teams. Simon Patterson gives thanks, quote, "for the incredibly strong, gentle, patient and caring support from friends, family, schools, our own church congregation, the wider church, colleagues, work clients, neighbours, police, government officers, and our professional counsellors. We have experienced love in a special way since the murders." I will conclude my account of key aspects of the victim impact statements with what Don and Gail's son Matthew had to say about your betrayal of trust. Quote, "Erin was embraced as part of the Patterson family. She was welcomed and treated with genuine love and respect in a way she did not appear to experience from her own family. Her actions represent a profound and devastating betrayal of the trust and love extended to her. Having regard to the aggravating circumstances of your offending and the victim impact statements, I have no hesitation in finding that your offending falls into the worst category for the offences of murder and attempted murder. As the case law makes clear, the fact that it is possible to imagine even worse instances of such offences does not refute that categorisation. The gravity of your offending warrants the imposition of the maximum penalties for your crimes. I turn then to your circumstances. The information I was provided about your personal history was minimal. Your counsel simply relied on the personal history you provided in your trial testimony. There were no psychiatric or psychological reports provided, no references from character witnesses. No doubt that approach to your plea hearing was based on your instructions, but it means the account of your personal history that I am about to give is limited. You were born in Adelaide on the 30th of September 1974, making you 48 years old at the time of your offending and 50 now. Your maiden name was Scudder. In 1977, your family relocated to Melbourne, residing in Hampton. In 2004, you and Simon Patterson met whilst you were both employed at Monash City Council. Simon told the jury that he was working there as a civil engineer and you were the RSPCA's representative on the council. By 2005, you and
God.
Simon were romantically involved. In 2006, your grandmother died, leaving you a substantial inheritance. Monies from her estate were distributed between 2007 and 2015. During those years, you would be generous with your money to Simon's siblings, providing large, no-interest loans to them and their spouses so that they could purchase their own homes. On the 2nd of June 2007, you and Simon married. You told the jury that your parents did not attend the wedding. They were holidaying in Russia. Soon after your marriage, you and Simon travelled around Australia and overseas for a few months before settling in Perth. Simon got a job working for an inner city shire council. In 2009, when you were 34, your son was born. In April 2009, you and Simon set off with the baby to explore the top end of Australia. You reached Townsville in November 2009, at which point you parted company. You flew back to Perth. Simon drove back with the baby. You rented a cottage for you and the baby. Simon rented an on-site caravan close by. This was the first of many comparatively short-term separations. You reunited by the end of January 2010. In 2011, your father died. In that year, you also opened a second-hand bookshop in Pemberton, Western Australia. In 2013, when you were pregnant, you and Simon returned to Victoria with your son to live closer to Simon's family. In 2014, your daughter was born. In 2015, you and Simon separated permanently. In 2019, your mother died, leaving you an inheritance. In June 22, you and your children moved into a newly constructed home at 84 Gibson Street, Leongatha, the home at which you served the fatal lunch on the 29th of July 23. You have no relevant criminal history. You maintain your innocence. In other words, there is no evidence of remorse. I turn now to the conditions of your imprisonment. As mentioned, you have been in custody since the 2nd of November 23. There were 2 affidavits tendered relating to your conditions of imprisonment. The first was sworn by a solicitor who acts for you and was based largely on your instructions. The second affidavit was sworn by Jennifer Hosking, Assistant Commissioner, Sentence Management Division at Corrections Victoria, who also testified at your plea hearing. Ms. Hosking's evidence included confirmation of the following matters. You have a, quote, maximum security rating and, quote, major offender status. Because of the nature of your crimes and your notoriety, you have been assessed as being at significant risk from other prisoners. You have not been assessed as posing a risk to other prisoners. You have spent approximately 16 months of your 22 months at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre in a management unit called the Gordon Unit, and the rest of the time in a protection unit called the Murray Unit. A management unit is more restrictive than a protection unit. You have been in the Gordon Unit continuously for the last 15 months. The Gordon Unit has about 20 cells. You are not permitted to mix with the other women in the Gordon Unit. You have spent at least 22 hours in your cell every day that you have been in the Gordon Unit. There have been 16 days since November 24 where, because of lockdowns, you have been confined to your cell for the entire 24 hours per day. The maximum period that a prisoner in the Gordon Unit could have out of their cell on any given day is 4 hours, but, quote, that wouldn't happen very often. Your meals and medicine are currently delivered through a flap in your cell door. There is a small concrete yard, approximately 2 metres by 1.5 metres, which adjoins your cell, which, with permission, you may access for fresh air. If prisoners are using the larger exercise yard, which abuts your exercise yard, you may not use your small yard. During your time in the Gordon Unit, you have barely had any contact with other individuals. Permission is required for you to communicate with any other prisoner, which, according to your counsel, is complicated by the fact that you are not informed of the identities of the other prisoners in the Gordon unit. You currently have approval to communicate with one other prisoner in the Gordon unit through a wire mesh when the two of you are permitted to use your respective adjoining exercise yards. That other prisoner is undergoing a lengthy sentence for terrorism offences and has attacked other prisoners. You did not ask to communicate with that person and have not communicated with her. The suggestion that you should communicate with her was made by a corrections officer. There is an intercom in your cell which, if permission is granted, you may use to communicate with one other prisoner in the unit at a time, but you have not done so. In order to attend any other part of the prison, for example, the visitors' centre or the library, you are driven there escorted by 2 corrections officers. While theoretically prisoners in the Gordon unit are able to access the prison library twice per week for 20 minutes at a time, you have not been able to do so because of staff shortages and a rule that you may not access the library if another is doing so. Consequently, you have only been able to access the library a handful of times during your time in the Gordon unit. United Nations guidelines, known as the Bangkok Rules, provide that a prisoner should not be in separation for more than 15 days at a time, but you have now been in separation continuously for 15 months. There are 2 prisoners in the Gordon unit who have been there in excess of 3 years. And whilst the primary principle in the placement of prisoners is to manage and place them in the least restrictive environment necessary to ensure the safety and security of the individual prisoner and other prisoners, the least restrictive environment can be very restrictive. As for your future conditions of imprisonment, whilst your placement in the Gordon unit is reviewed monthly, Ms. Hosking was unable to say whether you would ever be moved from the Gordon unit. I infer that given the unprecedented media coverage of your case and the books, documentaries and TV series about you, which are all in the pipeline, you are likely to remain a notorious prisoner for many years to come and as such remain at significant risk from other prisoners. I turn then to a number of relevant sentencing principles and rules. Section 5 of the Sentencing Act 1991 declares that the only purposes for which sentences may be imposed are just punishment, specific and general deterrence, rehabilitation, denunciation, and protection of the community. I have had regard to all of these sentencing purposes in formulating my sentences, but rehabilitation has taken a backseat because of the gravity of your offending. Other provisions of the Sentencing Act that are of particular relevance to your case are as follows. Under Section 6A to 6F, you fall to be sentenced as a serious violent offender in respect of the 3 murders, meaning that the protection of the community is the principal purpose for which the sentences on those counts must be imposed. Under Section 6F, your status as a serious violent offender must be entered in the court records. Section 11(1) provides relevantly that if a court sentences an offender to be imprisonment for the term of her natural life, the court must, as part of the sentence, fix a period during which the offender is not eligible to be released on parole, unless it considers that the nature of the offence makes the fixing of such a period inappropriate. Section 11A 4A provides that where an offender is sentenced to life imprisonment, the sentencer must fix a non-parole period of at least 30 years, unless it is not in the interests of justice to do so. Is it inappropriate to fix a non-parole period? Would fixing a non-parole period be contrary to the interests of justice? As mentioned above, this is the main dispute that I have to determine. Sentencing case law establishes that as a general rule, harsher than normal conditions of imprisonment will warrant mitigation of penalty. There is nothing about your conduct whilst in custody which might cast doubt on the application of that general rule. As Ms. Hosking indicated, you are in a management unit to protect you from other prisoners, not vice versa, nor do you have any relevant criminal history. In their written submissions, the prosecution conceded that your conditions of imprisonment are more burdensome than for a mainstream prisoner, and that they are likely to remain so for the foreseeable future. The prosecution submitted that this is a, quote, relevant consideration for sentence. In oral submissions, the prosecution conceded that this consideration was not just relevant, but, quote, important and, quote, weighty, while still pressing for life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. You have effectively been held in continuous solitary confinement for the last 15 months, and at the very least, there is a substantial chance that for your protection, you will continue to be held in solitary confinement for years to come. The Court of Appeal in Yat against the King referred without criticism to the observation that, quote, the adverse health effects of solitary confinement are well established. I note too that Ms. Hosking stated at the plea hearing that, quote, being separated has negative outcomes for people. We're very aware of that. The harsh prison conditions that you have experienced already and the likely prospect of solitary confinement for the foreseeable future are important and weighty considerations which should count for something in the sentencing exercise. In my view, the only scope for making them count is by the fixing of a non-parole period. In opposing the imposition of a non-parole period, the prosecution relied on the Queen against Colston, where the offender was sentenced to life imprisonment without a non-parole period for the savage murders of 3 people. But that case makes clear that, quote, where there is a substantial factor pointing towards clemency, as I consider your present and likely future conditions of imprisonment to be, the fixing of a non-parole period may be appropriate even for an offender who has committed multiple murders. Fixing a non-parole period is not to undervalue the horrendous nature of your offending. Your total effective sentence will be life imprisonment, and the period during which you will be ineligible for parole will be a very substantial one. Please stand. For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. All sentences are to be served concurrently. The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years. I declare that you have served 676 days by way of pre-sentence detention. Finally, and by consent, I make the disposal order sought by the prosecution. Would you please remove Ms. Patterson? Adjourn the court, please.
Stand, please. This honourable court stands adjourned, sine die. God save the King.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, it can't just be me. I think that's disgusting. I think it's disgusting. Murder 3 people, and the way she murdered them, premeditation, over months, and attempt to kill another one, 33 years. I think it's disgusting. I honestly think it's disgusting. And you know what? I don't care about her welfare. You know, when he was going on about her welfare in solitary confinement, I couldn't give a shit. So what about Don, Gale and Heather? They can't go to the library, can they? They can't, you know, they get, they're gone, you know, they've got no second chance. Oh my God. So let's presume 33 years, let's presume she does get out after 33 years. She'll be 83. Now, I know it's, you know, it's elderly, but it's still, she'll have had more life than Don, Gale and Heather had. And she's still, you know, Erin's got money, hasn't she? She'll come out, if she's healthy, if she stays healthy while she's in prison, she'll come out and she'll have a bit of a life. She'll have more of a life than she gave her victims. I'm fuming. Yeah, because he said they would run concurrently, Yvonne, not consecutively. So, yeah, 3 life sentences and 25 years for the attempted murder of Ian, but running concurrently, so they're all running together. Oh my God. It just makes me really angry. Let's see what they're saying on the news channel. Are they still live? Let's have a look. Honestly, I can't believe it. I absolutely. I was so angry with Justice Beale. You know, early on, it did seem more like, let's have a look what's going on here. You know, he sounded like he was sort of, you know, he sort of summed it all up, didn't he? And I think what he's trying to say is, right, so apparently on Twitter, on X, they're saying that the only reason she's been given the chance of parole in 33 years is because of the harsh conditions that will see her left in solitary confinement for 22 hours a day for years to come. I'm sorry, I just don't care. Literally do not care. You know, she's murdered these people. She, you know, just disgusting. Let's see if we've got a video, a news video. Honestly, I'm really disappointed. I'm really disappointed. So 3 life sentences with no parole for 33 years. I'm a bit speechless, to be honest. Sorry, I'm going down X and there's all these, obviously, everything, people are saying all sorts of things. I'm looking for a video, see what the news, how the news are reacting to it. I mean, I know it's a long time, 33 years, of course it's a long time. But I'm sorry, to me, can't find a. What do you all think? Let me know what you think. All right, let's have a look at this news thing now.
Is likely to do with the fact that Erin Patterson is probably being loaded back into the prison van now, and it's likely that she'll leave court.
And of course, we've been watching the live feed of this sentence, and some were in the courtroom. As we say, it was packed. We had our reporter, Sash Payne, in there, who will be joining us shortly to describe Erin Patterson and, her movements in there and how she reacted to that sentence. The judge in there made that point that Erin Patterson has shown no remorse. What did he have to say about that?
Well, that's exactly right. Because Erin Patterson maintains her innocence, he couldn't consider that element as a kind of mitigating factor. Usually, if an offender has entered an early guilty plea or if they admit some kind of remorse, that does something to minimise their sentence. In this case, this is not something that Justice Beale could consider because Erin Patterson
she hasn't expressed any
that she
remorse.
poisoned the guests, deliberately poisoned the guests, and that she did that intentionally. So Justice Beale couldn't take that into account when he was
I like the
delivering
American
his sentence.
sentences
The other things
better.
that he did take into account, though, as I was saying, were the difficult circumstances that she's facing in prison. So she has barely any other contact with any other prisoners. The only prisoner she's permitted to speak to is the one, I think, next door to her cell. This is a convicted terrorist who's known to attack other prisoners, and Erin Patterson hasn't made any efforts to speak to her. And she's also likely to remain notorious. As you can imagine, the interest in this case is not going away. Justice Beale referred to the many different types of media that are in progress around this case, including news coverage, books, podcasts, documentaries, and for this reason she will remain a notorious prisoner, and for that reason she does need to be kept in relative security, and that means that she doesn't have the same access to prison activities that the other prisoners have. For example, going to the library, she's only been able to do that a couple of times because in order to access the library she needs to be flanked by security guards. So these are some of the things that Justice Beale took into account, and he said, the non-parole period, fixing that non-parole period was really the only way he could acknowledge those difficulties.
And Alex, sorry,
I couldn't give a shit about the difficulties.
An appeal.
And
so Erin Patterson now from this date has 28 days to lodge an
someone
appeal.
Who doesn't admit they've done something wrong.
For the expiry of that would be October 6th. So during this time, her lawyers may make an announcement that an appeal is on foot. We just don't know that. The lawyers haven't spoken so far. We didn't hear them speak even after the verdict. So it's not clear whether Erin Patterson will appeal, but if she does, she'll have the opportunity to appeal on either the conviction or the sentence or both. So whether she chooses to do that is still unknown.
Alexandra Alvaro outside the Supreme Court, thank you, and we will return to Alex shortly. But I'm joined now by Associate Professor in Criminology and Justice at RMIT University, Brianna Chesser. Brianna Chesser, thank you for your time.
Now, I think at the end of I believe in forgiveness. I do believe in forgiveness. If somebody actually admits they've done something wrong and expresses remorse for it, Erin hasn't admitted she did anything wrong. She has not expressed remorse. She hasn't shown a slither of remorse towards those families that she's ruined. She's a triple murderer. And an attempted murder on another. All four vulnerable people she knew, people who cared about her, people who were trying to help her, and she planned it over time. It wasn't a heat of the moment murders. It wasn't a mental health issue. It wasn't any of those things. It was just she's a nasty, spiteful, evil bitch. And she should have had life without parole. To me, that was the only sentence. And I don't care that she's on her own in there. Good.
What we're looking for there is an acknowledgement of the impact of the crime, and as such, the court can then take that into account.
And there was also the point made that no psychiatric reports were submitted. Were you surprised by that?
Yes, look, I was surprised by that, particularly given the nature of Ms. Patterson's testimony herself, which alluded to some mental health issues that she had been experiencing. But Justice Beale rightly pointed out that counsel were likely acting on Ms. Patterson's instructions in not preparing psychological or psychiatric reports to provide some context in the pre-sentence hearing.
And Judge Beale addressed motive. He said it was not required. He said to Erin Patterson directly, only you know why you committed them, meaning the offences. I will not be speculating about that matter. What was your reaction to that? Because motive is often a crucial factor. When is it not, and why not in this case?
Look, I think motive is relevant where you require motive to be able to understand why the offences happened. I think the police and the investigators had so much collateral information that there was no need for the motive to be filled in. Justice Beale quite rightly said that Ms. Patterson is in fact the only person who understands why she acted the way that she did. But in these circumstances, it wasn't why that was relevant. It was what she did and the impact of what she did.
This was always a question of whether a non-parole period would be set. The Justice Beale did take that route, but 33 years. But of course, as we know, the prosecution was pushing for life imprisonment with no parole. What was taken into account for Erin Patterson in terms of those conditions that she has been enduring and what we heard there from Justice Beale?
Look, I think Justice Beale was really minded by the fact that Ms. Patterson is experiencing conditions that many other prisoners.
Yeah, this is what they're all going to be talking about now. Poor Erin and the conditions that she's enduring. She's alive, though, isn't she? She's getting up in the morning, she's breathing. She has it might not be a brilliant life in prison, but it's a life. Don and Gail and Heather, they haven't got any life. They can't go to the library or do crocheting or straighten their hair. And as you just said then, Susie, she'd also tried to kill Simon on various occasions. This is hang on.
In particular, the homicide squad and the team led by Detective Stephen Eppingstall. They made a professional, efficient and effective investigation into what happened at the lunch. They brought to light the truth of what happened with the death of 3 good people.
Oh.
We're grateful for their skills that brought this truth to light. And I'm also very grateful for the kindness and compassion they showed us, me and my family, throughout the long process that has brought us to this day. They've done a wonderful job. I'd like to extend gratitude too to the team from the Office of Public Prosecutions, led by Senior Counsel Nanette Rogers. The court processes are a little bewildering to lay people like me, and we're grateful for their expertise, their hard work, and their perseverance that has secured this conviction. I'd also like to commend them for their kindness and compassion showed to us throughout this long process. They have also done a wonderful job.
Oh,
We're also grateful for the staff of the various public health services that played an important role in dealing with the aftermath of the lunch. There are so many services and agencies and people involved that I can't start naming names. But please, each one, accept my sincere gratitude for the part that you have played in this process. We're thankful that when things go wrong, there are good people and services and systems available to help us recover. I'd like to encourage all those involved to keep turning up and serving others. Our lives and the life of our community depends on the kindness of others. I'd like to encourage everybody to be kind to each other.
Oh, I love this.
Finally, I want to say thank you to the many people from across Australia and around the world who, through their prayers and messages of support, have encouraged us. I thank the people of the Leongatha and Currumbara communities in particular. Your thoughtfulness and care has been a great encouragement to us. That's all I wish to say for now. Please respect our privacy as we continue to grieve and heal. Thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
That was live there from outside the Victoria Supreme Court. Ian Wilkinson, the
Oh God, he's so sweet, that guy.
Showing grace, expressing his gratitude there after the court process and the sentencing today. That breaking news we have had. Erin Patterson, the mushroom murderer, triple murderer who has been sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years. With Justice Beale there today in that live broadcast in what was a first for the Victoria Supreme Court. Telling the court he had no hesitation in finding that the offending falls into the worst.
The thing is, Ian, how could you do it? Now, when you see Ian talking like that, and you can presume that the other three were very similar type of people to Ian, that's what you have to remember what this woman did. She sat round the table with them, fed them poisonous mushrooms. These nice people who had never done her any harm, had only ever tried to help her. That's what she did. And that man is only even still alive because the hospital managed to save him. He should have been dead as well. She wanted to kill him as well. This is the woman that we're talking about. We have to remember that.
He was listening to evidence throughout that 11 weeks, every single day, displaying a huge amount of stoicism, usually with his arms crossed with a pretty neutral expression in the courtroom. Today, same thing in court from all accounts, and he's just spoken outside the court, as you heard. But in terms of his victim impact statement, last time we were in court, he said that essentially it's one of the distressing shortcomings of society that in these cases so much attention is showered on the accused, but when it comes to the victims, you know, we hear much less. And today, just when he spoke, he reminded everybody to be kind and asked for people to respect his privacy. But again, in the victim impact statement, he said the greatest impact of Erin's actions was robbing him of Heather's company, his wife Heather's company, that there was little joy now in pottering around the house and garden. He was now living a single life. And that he lives with ongoing health issues to his liver. Of course, we know that death cap mushroom poisoning has a huge impact on one's liver. Part of treatment for death cap mushroom poisoning is to use liver protecting medication. So he still has issues with that. He still has low energy levels. And he also offered Erin Patterson forgiveness, which was incredibly powerful in court last time we were here. He said, I bear her no ill will. I hope that she uses her time in jail to become a better person.
She couldn't be a
And I
worse
am no
person.
longer Erin Patterson's victim. She
Couldn't
has
be a
now
worse
become
person,
a
could she?
victim
You
of
can't
my
get any
kindness.
worse than Erin Patterson.
Just speaking outside court now, he thanked police for bringing the truth of the lunch to light. He said he was grateful for their kindness, for their compassion. He thanked the Office of Public Prosecutions for their hard work. He said they did a wonderful job. He was grateful to the staff. He encouraged all of those involved in this trial to keep turning up and serving others. He said our lives and the lives of others depends on the kindness of others. He encouraged everybody to be kind to each other. He thanked people for their messages, their well wishes, their prayers. He thanked the people of the Leongatha and Corumburra communities for their thoughtfulness and their care and encouragement. And again, he said, well, he asked for people to respect his family's privacy and the privacy of the community as they continue to grieve. And we know that this offending will have an impact for a very long time to come on.
Right, I have to stop there because I've got to, unfortunately, not being in Australia, it is here in Spain 20 to 3 in the morning. I've got a really busy day of classes tomorrow. For those of you who don't know, I am a Spanish teacher in my other life. Anyway, but I had to be here for this sentencing. I'm very disappointed with the sentencing. Just to anyone who might be coming in now and just missed it, it's 33 years. No parole for 33 years, basically. So if she survives, she'll be in her 80s before she gets a chance to come out. Of course, just because you're offered parole does not mean that you get it. Certainly not the first time, maybe. And the judge, who I'm really angry with, actually, I'm really annoyed with him. It's too lenient. His reason for being lenient was that because of Erin's notoriety as a prisoner, she has to be kept in solitary confinement virtually 22 hours a day, was it, or something? And if she wants to go to the library or anything like that, sometimes she can't go because of staff shortages. It's like we're supposed to feel sorry for Erin because she's in solitary confinement. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't. And I'll tell you why I don't. Because first of all, she's never admitted that she did it. She's so superior, and she'll appeal, and the families will all have to go through it all again. She's shown no remorse whatsoever. She sat there and watched those people eat that food, knowing what it was going to do to them. They died in agony. 3 triple murder and 1 attempted murder, and also, of course, the attempts on her husband's life. Though, of course, she hasn't been tried for that. So have no sympathy. I don't care that she's on her own in solitary confinement. That's the choice she made. She didn't care about the sentence she was giving them when she was sat eating with them. They were praying for her and trying to be nice to her. She didn't care about that. Why should anyone care about her and her feelings? She'd be okay. She'd be in that prison cell. She gets fed 3 times a day. She get looked after. She can probably do things on the internet or stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's not a good life. Well, that's what happens when you kill 3 people and try to kill another one. That's your sentence. It's not supposed to be fun. Fuck's sake. Anyway. I hope you all sleep well as well. And of course, there'll be fallout from it. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Maybe there'll be other interviews with people. But just seeing Ian there being interviewed, and he just reminds me, my dad was a very similar person, very similar type of person, and just not fair that this has happened to him. So no, I don't care that she's on her own 22 hours a day. Good. That's what happens when you murder 3 people. You know, what you're supposed to be doing. You know, living on a beach somewhere. Good God. Anyway, I'm going. So thank you, as I say, for caring about Don and Heather and Gail and Ian, of course. And yeah, we'll see. If you're watching on replay, let me know what you think in comments. Always, I'm always interested. Do you agree with me that it's too short? In my opinion, that should have been life without parole. You know, she's lucky she's not living in Florida. It should be a death penalty, wouldn't she? So yeah. Well, anyway, I've got a little song to cheer you up. I put a video to the second song that Admit meant. I thought I'll put it on at the end now just to cheer us up. So we need cheering up, actually. But I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, as always, let me find this video. Just a little song to cheer you up a bit. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. And bye. And prayers for Ian and the families and for her kids. But not for her. I don't feel like saying any prayers for her. Adios. Ooh.
Click that like if you're smiling today. Give a follow to help spread the play. Share the play with friends everywhere, so more can laugh and show they care. Like, follow, share, subscribe, don't hide. Join the Kimberlys, ride worldwide. Tap that bell so you never miss a dose of love and endless bliss. You too and others, search my name, Vicky Marie. Let's grow this flame. Thanks for the support. You're the best crew. Now go tell the world you know what to do. Vicky Marie. Like if you're smiling today, give a follow to help spread the play. Share the joy with friends everywhere. Click that like if you're smiling today. Give a follow to help spread the play. Share the play with friends everywhere, so more can laugh and show they care. Like, follow, share, subscribe, don't hide.